Welcome to the 5th Annual Food Justice Film Festival presented by the Center for Biological Diversity. I'm Linda Rico, Food Justice Film Festival organizer with the Center. One of the films we are featuring this year is The Smell of Money, directed by Shawn Bannon. The Smell of Money is an award-winning documentary that follows the story of Elsie Herring and her rural North Carolina community as they team up to fight generations of environmental, social, and racial injustice by the world's largest pork company. I'm so happy to be joined today by the director himself, Mr. Shawn Bannon. Welcome, Shawn, and thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So I want to jump right into these questions. This film you directed is so powerful. It's so moving. I was emotionally moved by it, and I knew as soon as I saw it, I really wanted to feature this in the Food Justice Film Festival. It's super important, the message, and you become so attached to the people in the film, especially Elsie. And I'm super excited for our participants to watch the film and to read about Elsie Herring's story and her community in North Carolina being at the epicenter of the world's largest pork company's deadly pollution. So I wanted to know, how did you first discover her story and what was going on there?
I mean, the interesting thing about Elsie is she was one of the few really vocal community members that was in the public eye to some degree. She had been interviewed, countless times already. So she was well known in those regards, but it was still very challenging to access her and to get connected with her. The first interview we did with her was relatively easy, but then we were like, oh, we want to film with you for several years. We want to keep coming back and learn about your story. She really wanted to focus, on the issues that were impacting her, and we also wanted to get to know her, and that was the most challenging part because she was just we had to be very, very respectful of what she was going through, and
Right.
building trust with her took a very, very long time.
So the Smell of Money has placed the conversation around the racial and environmental justice movements at the forefront, but especially in hearing Elsie's story. In terms of food justice, it's been no secret that the US food system is deeply rooted in injustice. And in fact, one study found that the racially segregated and historically redlined neighborhoods in the US were negatively and disproportionately affected when it came to accessing healthy, fresh food. Can you share more about the unsettling connection that you found in the film, specifically around the historically redlined neighborhoods in comparison to the current hog farm placement?
Yeah, I mean, in the movie, there's a point where we kind of show a map that's overlaid that was done, a study that was done by Steve Wynn and his and people that worked with him over the years, and it pretty much shows that where folks had kind of gotten their land after slavery, and then the modern day hog farms, and it's almost a perfect match. And you see that with all kinds of heavy polluting industries. It's not just hog farms, it's poultry farms, it's landfills, it's other things that that impact energy companies, pipelines. Seeing that in North Carolina to the degree that it's at is really eye-opening. And it's very frustrating. It's like, how is this even legal? How is this possible?
Right.
So yeah, that made me look at my own state. I live in Los Angeles, where it's we have very similar. Actually, one of the researchers I interviewed at some point was like, "Hey, she had been working in North Carolina and then was out in Los Angeles, and she said, oh, you gotta look around here in your own community." Essentially, I was like, okay. I mean, I was kind of aware, but it really, Los Angeles is so overwhelming and so big. It's a little bit more challenging to navigate it very quickly. But I spent years now looking and researching and figuring that kind of stuff out, and it's wild.
I found this stat that there are about 10 million pigs living across North Carolina, but in Elsie's county, I believe it's pronounced Duplin County,
Duplin, yeah.
Near Duplin County, where her family has owned land for over 100 years, that pigs now outnumber people almost 40 to 1, which was a wild statistic. But also kind of gives an idea of how big these hog farms are there, and how great they are there. Um, but I read an interview that you did, and you had said that you had suffered severe migraines and other physical ailments while filming due to the intense hog farm pollution. And I wanted to know if you could describe your experience for our viewers so they might get an idea of what it's like for those like Elsie who live there 24/7.
Yeah, that's something that really hit me hard. I had already suffered from migraine since when I was young, but not to the point like when I was in North Carolina where I just got knocked off my feet. It's
Yeah.
very rare where I'm ever just like I could not film. Like when you have that much on the line, you travel out there
Mm-hmm.
and you just can't film. And I'm one of those people, I'm not a big medicine person, so I had to go get a special prescription to combat this. But I think what the most important lesson learned here is like even if you have any kind of illness and you live there already,
Mm-hmm.
you can't escape those conditions.
Mm-hmm.
There's nowhere to go. Like if you live there and you're sensitive at all, or you become sensitive, and now we've been filming there for years. There's a lot of sensitivities that came out just being there, right? Where I'm now like the memory of just those smells.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one time when you always are supposed to wear like a protective suit when you go on the hog farms to make sure, just for odor alone, because
Wow.
that odor can stick with you.
Yeah.
But early on, the first time, I didn't wear like the protective outfit and I had to go get on an airplane. My clothes just, I could never get that smell out.
Yeah.
And it's like the farmer did warn me and told me, but you just can't comprehend how bad this stuff gets into your hair, your skin,
Right.
on your clothes, and how long that smell is going to last. So
Right.
yeah, but I think the big thing is if you're in discomfort at all, you're
Mm-hmm.
in an environment that you can never make comfortable for yourself, and that's the part that's really sad.
And we also see that, on top of these fumes, there's also like stuff literally getting sprayed on her property. And, that stuff is coming to the house. Like, tell us about that. What was that like seeing this? I can imagine it was just shocking.
Yeah, and it's untreated hog waste. So Renee Miller's a really good example because she has this over 700-foot long spray field right in front of her house, like across the road from her house, and it's on the side of her house too. But to prove that the waste that was being that was coming from a hog farm, was the same hog waste in her house, took years to study because they have to prove that it's not coming on her clothes and all this stuff. This is something anyone, with common sense, you go see 700-foot long hog waste spraying all the time.
Yeah.
It's inside of her house that but that's the one thing I think that's really challenging for scientists and people researching this is they know,
Hmm.
but they also know that it takes a long time to prove what's happening, and that's what the industry relies on
Right.
is all that stuff because people die, people might move, or something happens. Someone in the research team gets a new job. There's always things over that period of time that happen,
Hmm.
so it can be really hard to research communities like this, and things just need to happen now. Like you need to listen to community voices
Hmm.
and trust those voices because you have you know researchers coming in just to validate what community members have been saying for decades.
Right.
And I finally, it was hard to, when we were interviewing research about this, you have to ask the questions in the right way to get to that level. But after years of doing this, I understood the frustration on where they were at with this because they do want to be there, they do want to be doing this, but also it's like just be a good person and stop polluting these communities. We know what the impacts
Right.
are.
Exactly.
It sucks that we have to wait on these studies that go all over the country that can take a decade or more to accomplish
Hmm.
just to prove what people have been saying forever.
Right. What affected you the most while you were making this film?
I mean, the truest thing is kind of the darkest thing too for me is like the majority of the film, Jamie Berger, who's from North Carolina, and myself, most of it we filmed just the two of us. We have a big, team now, but early on and for the first few years,
Hmm.
it was just the two of us, and you got the sense, that, you know, a lot of the subjects you're interviewing were very calm. They didn't seem very angry. It was actually one of the feedbacks we got, like, how can these people be so calm and just act this way? You know, when you're living in that level of oppression, you have to save like all of your emotion and all this stuff. You know, early on, you can see we have early footage of Elsie which is right at the beginning, which shows her emotion when this first started happening. This is like, you know, over 20 years later that we're filming from this earlier footage of her, and you can kind of see what that does to a person and how they portray the reality. They're not acting on the camera. You know, this is their life. We're one of many people who have come and tried to tell their story, but the thing is that you realize that at some point that they, you know, Renee and Elsie don't think they're going to beat the hog industry.
Mhm.
They know that they're going to most likely die and nothing will have changed.
Right.
But their personality type is they're going to fight no matter what,
Right.
whether they're going to win or lose. And that's something with the way I was raised that was really hard to come to terms with. And honestly, working with a lot of young activists who are really excited and have a lot of positivities really helped me out, because that is really their story, and it is a truth that it is mostly impossible to fight these billion-dollar corporations and win, because there's
Right.
so many laws that protect them,
Mhm.
and there's not a lot of laws that protect folks like Elsie and Renee. I mean,
Right.
just look at the reality, and that's their reality. So that's one of those difficult things to, you know, to come to terms with.
Right. What do you think the most important thing you learned from these people, from Elsie, from Renee, from the community? What was like your biggest takeaway from them?
And there's so many things, so it's hard to, you know, my entire life has changed so dramatically since working on this film. But, you know, being an activist, uh, you know, it's the big takeaway for me is like the understanding of intersectional activism is like, you know, these things are so intertwined, you can't break them apart. There's no individual, like, you're going to take this one path
Right.
and that's all you're going to focus on. You're just going to focus on animal rights, and that's all you're going to do.
Hmm.
You will win in pretty much nothing except a few things, you know,
Hmm.
that you present as a victory.
Exactly.
Intersectionality, like all these movements have to work together,
Hmm.
and they're so connected. And if you're not seeing that connection, then you're really missing out on what's going on. So that was definitely the most important thing.
Are there any like projects that you have ongoing, like still with that community, or anything else that you're working on that you would like to share with our viewers?
Yeah, I am going to film that, you know, film with the community again. Biogas is a really big thing that's been going on, where they're greenwashing, trying to take, you know, the waste. And this is something that people started doing a long time ago. In our movie, Tom Butler, who is a hog farmer, he did this well over a decade ago, and the industry had no interest until after they lost this huge lawsuit and
Hmm.
tried to get the government to pay for it, where they take hog waste and convert it into energy. But they don't remove any of the pollution to the communities. So you have the government and taxpayers paying for the hog industry to create, you know, some of the dirtiest energy
Right.
in these communities. So that's a video I'm planning on going to film with the community soon. I've also been working on something that's a little bit more experimental that is on Los Angeles, and you know, the whole all the it's more just seeing all of these things I was kind of talking about before in communities, you know, like oil wells and
Hmm.
processing plants. And you know, processing plants kind of get off easy most of the time because they employ so many people, but the pollution that they put out is really off the charts, and they're not very regulated, in my opinion. You might say they're regulated, but they're not. So
Yeah.
working on something on that as well. Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. I look forward to seeing more of your work. I really love this film, and you know, the connections that you made with that community. I'm looking forward to see more. Um, so thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. And as a reminder to everyone watching, don't forget to sign up for this year's Food Justice Film Festival at foodjusticefilmfestival.com. As always, the festival is free to sign up and free to watch all 4 feature films anytime from October 24th through the 27th. And you can also catch all of our 2024 virtual interviews on our website all year long. Thank you everyone for watching and have a wonderful day.